both already moved to the third part, the last part, which is about the present-day situation, and you already decided to bet. So, just a short reply to this question. You both have been very much involved with many EU regional projects and policies. How realistic is it to expect the region of Ukraine, you already mentioned something about it, to join the EU in the foreseeable future? And we don't mean, by the end of this century, but like maybe in the next 10 years. You already made a bet about 2007. What's your bet now?
I'm not giving any more dates. I've learned my lesson. I think, to put it very simply, the sooner the better. But that's an all too simple answer because issues are very complex. And in a few sentences, the Ukraine and Moldova will get a date in December to begin accession talks, but we know that's only the very far beginning. Turkey has been negotiating for ages and it's not. I think there's the security geopolitical aspect, as I said, because a lot of this is about security of Europe. A lot of it is driven, and I think we here must understand that we are being asked to contribute to the security of Europe by resolving this issue. Because if you have a festering situation, because Europe then has to devote energy and attention to you, whereas there are these much bigger things that Misha mentioned, Middle East, etc., and Ukraine and Russia. So I think that the issue for Europe is really to invest as best they can while awaiting for a positive dynamic in our societies and in our leaderships, because politics is very much top-down. And I have written recently a small piece advocating that we need a quick win. And by that I mean, I've called it the two M's, Montenegro and Moldova. Take in two small countries in the next 5 years up until 2030. Of course, they need to do the homework. Rule of law, there's a Franco-German paper that came out about what the EU needs to do to prepare itself for new candidates by 2030. I recommend it to all of you. There are a lot of interesting things of what the EU needs to reform, but also it's a message. The key message there is, without the rule of law, nobody moves close. But as we all know, and I think many people have been involved here, we need to feel that the European Union is taking us to the table, bringing us to the table on security, on climate, on critical raw materials, on a lot of issues, and they already are. We are part of the energy union, the transport union, but there needs to be a tangible feeling for the people as well. So it's a pas de deux, it's a tango where two need to play, and if we don't feel, and I always say the homework, 90% of it is here, but the little help from our friends in Europe is essential. Without that, it doesn't happen. So, in my wildest positive dreams, we would see Montenegro, Moldova, or maybe Albania, we'll see how things go there, at least close to the door by 2030.
So Belgrade was originally a Celtic settlement, so we could also apply for Irish citizenship, maybe awaiting our membership.
Yes, although Ireland's an extraordinary example of what the European Union can do to a country, because when it joined the European Union, it was still more or less a theocracy where the Catholic Church determined so much of social policy in particular, and it was also quite a corrupt country as well. And since becoming a member of the European Union, Ireland has become one of the greatest success stories, such that the average wage in Ireland is now significantly higher than it is in the United Kingdom. So you can see we have real success stories. I have to say that with the prospect of Ukraine joining the European Union, all things have changed, and whilst accession talks may be marked in December, bringing Ukraine into the European Union is a whole different ballgame from bringing in the Western Balkans, as we saw with the reaction by Poland, initially Ukraine's greatest supporter, to the import of Ukrainian grain into Poland and other European Union countries. Ukraine will have probably the largest army in the European Union, a battle-hardened army at that. It will be traumatized at the end of the war on a whole series of levels. It is, as we know, a country which suffers from considerable corruption. And so, whilst I think that Ukraine is very much in the forefront of the European Union's geostrategic and geoeconomic thinking, it has a lot of critical raw materials that the EU would like to get its hands on. It's going to be an enormous challenge. If you were to see the EU neglect the Western Balkans in favour of Ukraine, you would have a serious crisis here in southeastern Europe on your hand, in my opinion. And so whether it will happen or not, I don't know, but my advice to the EU is to double down on your efforts in the Western Balkans before you try and bite off the huge issue of Ukraine and try and swallow that one.
May I just add 2 sentences?
Of course.
Prompted. A data point is very important. The estimated population of Ukraine now is 31 million. The Western Balkans are half of 31 million, if my estimation of 16 million is right. So very important to understand the figures on that. And secondly, I think the fact that Ukraine has taken such a cardinal role, of course now it's not so much in the news because of Israel-Palestine, is that we are in the same boat. And Misha is absolutely right. These things come together, which begs the question, if the Western Balkans, the question that many of us have asked over the years, what is the cost of non-enlargement? What does it mean to have the Western Balkans outside of Europe? Well, in my simple view, it means a playground for Russia and for China economically. And Russia is here to be a spoiler, to show that the European Union is weak and cannot bring these countries into the democratic European fold.
Yeah, one might argue that they have a point.
And now we come to, next to the last question, something that your institute has been very much involved with. There is an increasing number of organizations, researchers, who are deeply concerned about the prospects of the international liberal order and the future of liberal democracy globally, Freedom House, we Institute, etc. To what extent are they both endangered, international liberal order and democracy? Serbia is also among the countries where democracy has suffered setbacks. It is now considered a hybrid or transitional country in terms of democracy, so neither democracy nor autocracy, somewhere in between. So, in your opinion, is liberal democracy going to be reduced to Western Europe, the Anglosphere and allies, or is it still going to play a global role?
I think it will. I think it will still play a global role. I think that it's under threat in Western Europe as much as it is anywhere else. When I saw that the AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, got 18% of the vote in Hessen, a province where I actually, as a 16-year-old, went to school, and I looked up the little town Korbach where I was at school, and there they had almost 23%. You know, and it's just astonishing to see that the AfD is now conquering parts of the western half of Germany as well as the eastern half of Germany, and this is a threat which we have to take very seriously, in my opinion. So it's not so Western Europe is as vulnerable as other places, but you know, notwithstanding Bolsonaro, notwithstanding the bloodshed in Colombia, there are countries in Latin America which really take their democracy very seriously and are very proud of it. It's harder to find parts of Africa, although Kenya has struggled through some difficult times and is becoming a big centre of economic growth in East Africa. South Africa, I'm afraid to say, the prospects are not great at the moment. India remains a vibrant democracy, but one which is clearly subject to populist tropes as well. So it's hard to say. What I would say is that whether you're in Europe, whether you're in India, whether you're in South Africa or Brazil, you have to fight for liberal democracy. We have to stand up and fight for this system if we want to maintain our own autonomy, our own freedom to think, to associate, to express those thoughts. And you know, there's no question the challenges are much larger than they were. Social media has changed the dynamics of democracy fundamentally. And one of the reasons why I think all of these institutes who are thinking about the international liberal order or the very question of democracy are important is a democracy needs to adapt. The democracy that we have at the moment clearly has major vulnerabilities, and we need to think more creatively about how democracy will engage citizens and get citizens involved in the political process, because at the moment you see a lot of alienation from that process.
So even the same question, and in addition, you were working so much with America. America was the model of democracy to everyone. Now in certain rankings it's called a floating democracy. So what has happened?
Nobody's perfect. And it's no wonder that Misha and I have been friends for so long, because we think and believe in the same things. Democracy is a struggle. All the democratic benefits that we have through history, from the French Revolution or the English Revolution or other revolutions, have been won in the streets and sometimes through institutions. People have died to get the right to vote, or to get the right to have an 8-hour workday, to have children not working. People forget that this is not given on a silver plate, that it has to be reinvented every morning when you wake up, because there are always those who will try and take it away, who will try and, you know, concentrate power in their own hands. That is why we, humanity, have invented through, you know, the English and French political philosophers something called, you know, the checks and balances, the pluralism, the separation of powers between legislative, judicial, and executive. This is something that, you know, or the federalists who say, how do we balance, how do we control the president who we elect directly? And that's why we have parliaments, and that's why we should have an independent judiciary that unfortunately in this country we don't have, as we know. And so we have to fight for that, and I think Misha gave a very good tableau of where the world is. And so it's a constant challenge, because those in power using populist nationalist means will do that. But if I take the negative examples of Hungary and Poland, not anymore the negative example, both capital cities were in the hands of the democratic opposition. So Budapest is in the hands of the opposition, and of course Warsaw was in the hands of Rafał Trzaskowski, who we know very well, and in Turkey, Istanbul and Ankara are in the hands of the opposition. So I think people tend to forget, you know, we talk about Erdogan, Orban, Kaczynski, but things are a little more complex, and these facts, I think, show that the struggle never ends, and we cannot be complacent about when we have it. And as you said, America is the best example of how things can go very badly wrong in what we call an old democracy.
Unfortunately, Serbia is an example where it doesn't work neither in the capital nor on the national level.
Well, there will be elections.
But speaking of that, and we come to the final point, do you have any messages or recommendations that you would like to share with all those in the region who believe that EU prospects and harmonization of the region with a liberal order are possible, and I suppose most of us in this hall still believe in it.
Well, I would say the only thing I can say, and whatever I say will sound trite and fatuous, so please forgive me in advance for that. But I would say don't give up, but it's up to every individual in Serbian, Bosnian, Kosovo, Macedonian, Albanian, Montenegrin society to stand up and do what they can and let the European Union know that it is still a goal which the region aspires to. But as I say, you know, after 20 years after 2003, it can't help but sound somewhat trite, so forgive me.
Yeah, it's been 20 years since the Thessaloniki summit, and I remember being there in Thessaloniki as part of a civic meeting that happened. Huge hopes, and our friend George Papandreou, of course, was in the lead, and the famous words of Romano Prodi, who was then president, who said, yes, these countries will join without ifs and buts, provided, of course, they fulfill. I fully understand our friends who are very pro-European, who are losing faith, and who say Europe doesn't want us. You know, what are they doing, supporting these various regimes in the region? Why aren't they speaking up more forcefully? I fully understand that, but as Misha rightly said, you know, if you believe in these values, if you believe in the possibility of a better, more just, more democratic society where human rights and the rule of law are possible, as we were both saying earlier, this means that you have to fight for it. You have to go out there and be active in our various ways. You know, it doesn't mean you have to be active in a political party. You can be civically active, or in your neighborhood, or in your family, or, you know, in the shop when you go and you hear something, you know, you say, well, maybe not easy, nothing easy about this. So we mustn't be naive about the fact how difficult it will be. But again, if we believe in this, and that's the whole European project, this is a peace project, my goodness. You know, we had a war, and if we are serious about peace and stability, at least where we are, then this is the project we want to join. European member states have not gone to war with each other. Huge problems. There's constant talk about the Franco-German friction and tension, and we now see yesterday who follows, the Germans have given in on the French need to have nuclear power as part of the mix in the climate change. Compromise is the key to everything, and if we don't understand that, we won't move forward.
Well, thank you both very much, and we hope that for the 40th anniversary we will be able to host you as EU members, or otherwise we will follow your electrician, I'm afraid. In the meantime, thank you very much. Just repeat that this is not the end. We are going to see you tomorrow again at this huge party. So please welcome, and thank you for coming today.